In a mere 2 hours, the duration of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, a new and sobering truth was presented. Americans were no longer safe from the upheavals that had already devastated Europe, where World War II had begun 2 years earlier. The situation brought new and unusual demands that were going to be made on women. December 7th, the day that will live in infamy, the day that shaped the lives of an entire generation, the day the Japanese attacked. And my grandmother was there. She remembers Pearl Harbor. I wanted to learn more about her story and the story about how a nation came together to save the world. We need to save stories like this so our children won't fight the same battles and will instead gain from the lessons paid for in the blood of our countrymen and women. The stories of women during World War II are few and far between, and the stories of women on the front lines are even more scarce. And that's why I've decided to learn all I can about this period. A bit of background. 2 weeks after I told my grandma her first grandchild would be a boy, I found myself in her house filled with 55 years of memories, wondering how a life could end so suddenly. It was in my grief that I found the bits and pieces of her World War II story. I found the letters in a box of my great-grandfather's belongings I was about to throw away. Her mother's scrapbooks were in a nook behind the deep freeze that critters had invested. And her journal, well, I accidentally gave it away. But amazingly enough, I got it back, and that's a whole other story altogether. It was this set of almost unnerving coincidences that brought the pieces together and told me that I needed to share her story with the world. Now, 2 sons later, I'm still compiling all the pieces, archiving this precious information. I want to include enough reference information in the form of time capsules to make this narrative interesting, to put the story in perspective. I think of it as pop-up video to make the history aspects a little more entertaining. So far, I feel as if I've opened Pandora's box, that every new nugget of information takes me down another research rabbit hole. For this project, I focused primarily upon the Army Nurse Corps uniforms with the hope of demonstrating the lopsided treatment of women. I know the oral history my grandfather wrote indicated there were many issues trying to figure out how to deal with the influx of women. To that end, I have not yet been successful. I think I just need to ask my questions in a different way. What I have learned is the whole idea of outfitting women was so foreign to the Army quartermasters that hundreds of mistakes were made in the process of deciding on a uniform. And let's not even begin to talk about undergarments and who should pay for them. Nearly every decision was second-guessed or changed before production could even begin. It was fascinating to find the primary documents and newspaper articles extolling the details, fabrics, embellishments of the uniform, but not the women in them. They read like society column coverage of a wedding or an event in a Jane Austen novel. Many beautiful women modeling the latest and greatest, with little consideration of the environments beyond the office where the uniforms would be worn. It is almost easier to research this topic today than when I first began, as more people have decided to record these stories. Now I need to find a way to determine which strings to follow and which to leave behind for now. This is a story about actual events, and I plan to make every effort to create this story into a book or an interactive website. I want to create something that's more like perusing a scrapbook with lots of visuals, ephemera, primary documents. The trick will be dealing with copyright concerns, as this information is not yet in the public domain. We can learn so much by just looking at the advertisements at the time, or even the postmarks with messages to buy war bonds to take out the enemy. And we need to preserve images like these. It will be a privilege to provide a snapshot of life during World War II and the many obstacles faced by women. I only hope I can do the job justice.